The NFL Scouting Combine is in the rearview mirror, and today we're tackling Jordan Reid of ESPN. He drops a 2-round mock draft for us, and we're going to go through and do a first-round Dynasty rookie draft, Superflex mock, half tight end premium, and kind of talk about some of the fits, some of the landing spots, as if they are verbatim how Jordan Reid thinks the NFL draft is going to go. You guys know the drill around here. If you're new, leave a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. A quick announcement before we get into things. We are doing a new listener league. There will be a form down below in the pinned comment for you guys to fill out. If you want to be a part of said listener league, you'll get bonus entrance if you're a Flock Fantasy subscriber, annual Mother Flocker. Just follow the instructions down there and we'll get everything situated. We're planning to draw names for that on March the 15th. So next Saturday, as you guys are listening to this, and we should have a lot of fun. It will be a best ball format. I think me and Danny can both agree we're in too many leagues to do another managed one, but it will be super flex, most likely. It will be best ball. Other rules, buy-ins, all that kind of stuff will be voted on at the time that we, draw names for everything. So, Danny, you are picking 101. We are going to get things kicked off here. And like I said, we are using Jordan Reid of ESPN's 2-round NFL mock draft, which is linked down below in the description.
Yeah, and it's pretty simple for me. My 101 in terms of my player scouting lands with what I would say is one of his nutted landing spots here with the Las Vegas Raiders at the 6th overall pick. Give me Ashton Genty of the Boise State Broncos. Record-setting year, obviously, this past year. Second all-time in rushing yards in NCAA history to Barry Sanders. And when you watch the tape on this guy, I mean, we've talked about it in terms of prospect profiles. We've talked about them ad nauseum this offseason. But, I mean, there's nothing Genty does on tape that isn't extremely well.
Yeah, he literally does everything at a high level. Obviously, took a step back as a receiver this year, but that sophomore production gives you a lot of faith that he can be a 3-down workhorse. That 6th overall draft capital would firmly put him in the stratosphere of some of the best running back prospects we've seen over the last 5 to 10 years. You think about the guys that ended up going top 10. You're talking Ezekiel Elliott, Leonard Fournette, Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, guys that are true difference-making fantasy level assets. We're talking multi-time RB1s across the board. And with Genty going to the Raiders, you'd have to imagine, I think it says in the mock draft that they have a veteran stopgap option as far as their quarterback situation. They're going to build their offense around Genty, build their offense around Brock Bowers, some of the young talent that they've acquired. And Genty would get 300 plus touches probably his rookie season in this landing spot.
One of the most interesting run schemes, obviously, with Chip Kelly coming as well. I do think that Raiders offense, the multiple looks that we saw at Ohio State, you have a guy in Genty that can really do it all. He can run between the tackles. He can run stretch. He can run any type of zone. Obviously, like we said, in 2023, very, very good as a receiver. This would just be a home run for a team that needs a bell cow back.
Yeah, absolutely. It says that the Raiders could be heavily involved in like a Russell Wilson or a Justin Fields or somebody like that. So that's kind of, I guess, the direction Jordan Reid sees them going in free agency. Very soon, we're going to get answers on, what the veteran market's going to look like, because free agency's legal tampering window opens up on Monday. So we will start to see some of these deals. We're starting to see players get released and trade requests and all this kind of stuff. We're going to see the chips fall a little bit more, and we're getting more and more information on how we want to handle dynasty rookie drafts. So we did have 2 quarterbacks go with very, very high draft capital, 2 of the top picks. We had Cam Ward being the 1st overall pick to the New York Giants in a trade-up scenario where the Titans would trade down, with the New York Giants, who are desperate for the quarterback position. We also see Shadur Sanders go 2nd overall to the Cleveland Browns, which I would say is probably a stretch given what we've heard of the Shadur Sanders draft stock right now. I don't know. What are your thoughts on it?
So I believe it was Mary Kay Cabot, I want to say. Josh Norris, I actually ended up quote tweeting it, but basically the assumption was the Browns would actually be a team that would be interested in Shadur because of their connection with Pat Shurmur. Obviously, Pat Shurmur was the offense coordinator with the Colorado, and obviously he's going to have a lot of familiarity with Kevin Stefanski. So apparently there's like the connection there. Do I think it would happen at 2 overall? Absolutely not. You know what my galaxy brain situation that I think ends up happening is? They take Travis at 102 and they trade up from 33 to get Shadur after he falls to like 25. I think that's more reasonable if he's going to be a Brown.
That would be really interesting. And like stylistically, Shadur is actually a really good fit for Cleveland's offense. Like you need an accurate passer, a guy who can throw a good deep ball. Like whatever, like the best of Jameis Winston and Joe Flacco were the last couple of years is what in an ideal scenario Shadur Sanders can bring to you. So I don't actually hate the fit. I do think it's one of the better landing spots Shadur can go to. He also would have a pretty, stable veteran offensive line there, good play caller, all that kind of stuff. That being said, We do have Tedero McMillan going to the Dallas Cowboys with the 12th overall pick. He would probably be my pick in this situation, although Cam Ward going first to the Giants is also very, very intriguing for me. But I'm going to go with Tet McMillan. Pretty easy here. You don't see any number one corners. Tet McMillan not used to that, especially at Arizona. He was the focus point of defenses for a while there. CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott to go along in that offense. They will address the running back position later on in this draft as well, which would be just an absolute home run. My literal 102 and 103 from a talent standpoint is who the Cowboys end up with in this mock draft scenario. So I would feel really, really good if I were Danny and I was a Dallas Cowboys fan. But Tet McMillan, from a fantasy perspective, you're going to get realistically all the red zone opportunities with Lamb getting all the attention with the size he has, the speed. I was never concerned about the speed. People seem to think Tet McMillan is falling in mock drafts now because he didn't test at the combine. And would he have ran a 4.3 or something? Probably not. Otherwise, he probably would have just ran his
like a 4.54 guy.
Yeah, but like that's kind of what we all expected anyways. Yeah. He's a long strider. Mike Evans ran a 4.52 at the combine. All these big receivers, that's all you really need. When you have size and you're able to hand fight down the field and, win at the catch point, like Drake London, Mike Evans, Marquise Colston, some of these dudes, you don't need 4.3 speed. When you have 4.3 speed at that size, you're DK Metcalf, but it's a lot better to be a precise route runner and be able to find targets and get open and win at the catch point the way Tet McMillan does.
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of the team fit, it's pretty self-explanatory. Like on one hand, you can say, oh, well, maybe you want a situation where he could be the number one in targets. I don't really care about the number one targets when it comes to Dallas because, yes, obviously CeeDee Lamb will be the number one target there. But when you have the quarterback stability that they do, when you now have a number one on the other side that can take a lot of pressure off of Tet, I just think that would make the offense as a whole one of the most dominant in the league.
Yeah, no, it's pretty hard to argue. The biggest need that the Cowboys had other than a running game was they have no secondary pass catching options. Jake Ferguson didn't really take the step that he needed to. Brandon Cooks didn't really do a whole lot. Jalen Tolbert kind of contributed a little bit, but not like as much as you need
a good four in the future, I would say.
Yeah, you need a number two receiver to carry more weight, and especially Lamb started getting banged up, Prescott started getting banged up, and things kind of went to shit. So 103, you're on the board here. Like I kind of already teased the Cam Ward, the other quarterback there. Are you going to go in that direction? Are you going to roll with the running back who got first round draft capital potentially?
Yeah, you basically read me like a book here. It's going to be the running back with the first round draft capital going to, in my opinion, probably the nutted landing spot that he could possibly get. Like obviously we can talk about if he ends up, I mean, there's been buzz, maybe Omarian Hampton could go to 10th overall to the Bears or top 15. I could see it, but realistically, I think his draft range is more so in that 15 to 32 range. And in that range, I actually do think the Chargers are the best fit. Omarian Hampton, you got the height, you got the weight, you got the speed, you got the 3-down ability, you got the size. Like realistically, when it comes to Omarian Hampton, he is your prototype workhorse running back on a team with the Chargers that, although obviously J.K. Dobbins was very efficient last year, did have his own injury issues. Now you can just get that 4-year starter to play behind Justin Herbert, to punch in 20 touchdowns a year. That's exactly the role that I think Omarian Hampton would play on this team.
Yeah, I mean, Dobbins was RB 18 in points per game last year.
Yeah.
And, nobody was
with Gus being annoying.
Gus was a pest a little bit there. Dobbins dealt with his own injury issues, didn't really get a full workload until like week 3, week 4. Like Omarian Hampton, with the speed that he has, obviously doesn't have the injury issues that Dobbins had. He has probably better receiving chops, at least at this point in time, that you could develop into. For Omarian Hampton, yeah, this is a dude that could command a huge, huge workload for one of the best young offensive lines in the league, one of the best young quarterbacks in the league. Like, this is a really, really good fit and high draft capital for Hampton. I wouldn't be shocked if a lot of people took this route, which is I will pass on the quarterbacks and I will take Omarian Hampton with first-round draft capital here.
Yeah, because the way I look at it, the reason why I do favor Omar over those quarterbacks is when I view Omar, I see a running back with legitimate 1,500 plus rushing yard upside, 15 plus rushing touchdown upside. That, as much as I love Cam, I think he's a little bit more of a projection at this point compared to even some of the quarterbacks we saw last year. And in terms of Shadur, I just don't simply think he has the traits to be anything more than like a QB2 in Dynasty. So for me personally, give me the guy that could be a top 5 Dynasty running back if he hits the ceiling.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He would be, I think he would probably already be pretty close to a top 5 Dynasty running back day one. I think most people would probably rank him. Like, who would you rather have? Would you rather have Bucky Irving? Would you have Bucky Irving or Omarian Hampton in this situation?
Hampton.
Yeah, exactly. And Achane, Breece, that's the conversation point, realistically. Like, I would prefer probably Breece and Achane, but if you wanted to restart the clock, fresh rookie contract, 5 years of team control, I wouldn't blame anybody for doing it.
And I think this might end up being what ends up happening on draft day, that we see Genty obviously go in the top 10. We see Tet McMillan go maybe he's not going to be the top 10 guy that we thought based off what we've been hearing, but at the very minimum, he's going to be a top 15 overall pick, in my opinion. And then you're going to get Omarian Hampton sneaking in at the end of the first, and almost consensus on rookie boards. Those are probably going to be the top 3 picks.
Yeah, it'll depend what people's quarterback need is in your league and stuff. Because I wouldn't really fault anybody for taking Ward as high as second, to be honest. Like I probably wouldn't take him over Ted McMillan.
Too steep for me.
Like if you're in a quarterback needy situation, you tanked your team or whatever, and you get first overall draft capital to the Giants, where he's got Malik Neighbors to throw to. Brian Daboll can probably develop a quarterback to a high degree. That is going to be the pick that I end up making here at 104. Yep. Cam Ward to me has separated himself a decent bit from Shadur Sanders, as we've talked about in previous mock draft reactions. We definitely prefer the upside of what Cam Ward represents. It sounds like the NFL Combine was very eye-opening in terms of most teams view Cam Ward as the number 1 quarterback. It's pretty much Cam Ward and then everybody else, rather than, oh, some teams have Cam, some teams have Shadur. It doesn't sound like that's the case. It does seem like the scarcity of the top of the quarterback position is Cam Ward is the guy. And that could lead, as you see here, you have the Titans picking first overall, who could use a quarterback. You have the second overall pick, Cleveland Browns, and the New York Giants picking at third, who have been vocal and desperate about needing a quarterback. So I think either way you slice it, whether it's Tennessee takes it, Cleveland trades up a spot, New York trades up in this scenario, I actually think Cam will be the first pick in the draft, to be honest. I think there's not many quarterbacks available on the open market, trade, veteran, or otherwise. You get an opportunity to reset the clock with a young quarterback, especially Brian Daboll and Joe Shane kind of need some, redemption as far as the Daniel Jones, jettison Saquon Barkley, all that kind of bullshit that went on with the New York Giants. This would help them save their jobs. You hit on a young quarterback and he has a nice rookie season. Suddenly you just bought yourself more time.
Yeah, no, I think that would be the direction I would go at this point too. I also think, for what it's worth, they have been the most aggressive suitor to trading up. I do think the Giants would be a very good spot, like you were mentioning. Having that young wide receiver that you can build Cam Ward with for the future is a better nesting spot, in my opinion, than a couple of the other teams that are in contention for him.
Yeah, and I mean, Tracy's an interesting running back. Obviously, this is a 2-round mock draft, so we don't know what else they would add at wide receiver, running back, or whatever later on in the draft. But if the offensive line can get their shit together, which has been a problem for the Giants, like I saw Ian Hartitz put out a chart the last 5 years, like the worst offensive line supporting cast has been New York. Like they just have not been able to figure out their offensive line, despite the investment they've made into it.
You want to know how that happens?
How?
Having a bad offensive line and also being in a division with the Philadelphia Eagles and Dallas Cowboys pass rush.
Yeah, and the Commanders down linemen even too. So definitely it would be good news for Cam Ward. First overall draft capital, they traded up for the guy. He's got Malik Neighbors to throw to. He's got to be a top 15 to 18 dynasty quarterback, especially when you compare him to some of the older guys. Like if you're in a startup draft, would you rather start your draft in the 4th round, let's say, with Cam Ward, or would you rather take Dak Prescott, Tua Tagovailoa, somebody like that? If you're building out a rebuilding kind of build out of the startup, definitely makes sense that he should be valued amongst those players. So at 105, I feel like this is really the winner of this mock draft would be the 105 to 108 picks, just because of how many great landing spots we got here from some of these kind of back end options here.
So I could be a homer. I could say, well, 44th overall, really good running back, lands with my favorite team. But there's a player that I actually have higher on my board. And it's funny because the landing spot he gets is my comp for him. Robert Woods plus, number 1 slot wide receiver. Emeka Egbuka, you are in a Los Angeles Ram in this instance. And I think at 26 overall, he would immediately be the number 2 wide receiver behind Puka Nacua there, because we're assuming that Cooper Kupp in this instance. Again, I'm not sure if he actually wrote it in the mock. I'm assuming he might have even made mention that in this scenario that they would trade Cooper Kupp. I mean, on record, regardless, we've heard from Les Snead say that the very least likely option for Cooper Kupp would actually be coming back to the Rams. So I'm assuming that Cooper Kupp is gone. If you're telling me that you can get a good amount of that Cooper Kupp usage for Emeka Egbuka, it's a Monter St. Brown upside.
Yeah. So I think the NFL views some of these wide receiver prospects as really good number 2s, maybe with number 1 upside, which I think is pretty fair of McMillan and Egbuka, at least at this current stage of their development. But I love the fit for both of these guys. You don't have to be the number 1 in the situation you're in. Puka Nacua can be the number 1, command all the attention. CeeDee Lamb can be the number 1, command all the attention for Ted McMillan. I think both of these dudes are very much capable of being number 1 receivers, but if you don't have to be, you don't have to be. I said the same thing about Devontae Smith coming out of Alabama. He didn't have to be a number 1 receiver in Philadelphia, and he wasn't. And he's an absolute stud who could be a number 1 receiver on most teams.
Well, the question I asked for you now, obviously, again, we can gauge how much of a 1-for-1 it is because obviously Emeka is going into his rookie year. Although, I mean, we do see rookie receivers be very, very productive year one regardless. But let's just say that's a potential stopgap here. Cooper Kupp was a top 3 round pick in redraft leagues last year, and we had questions about the ability.
Yeah, I mean, Egbuka would probably be like at least a 5th round redraft pick, I would imagine, minimum, in this scenario. Like, you got Stafford back, Puka Nakua's there. They throw the ball like crazy. Like, this is a really good landing spot. I think the back and forth I would have, because as you know,
between him and Judkins,
I'm going to pick Judkins here because, as you know, they're my 103 and 104 from a talent standpoint. Just in this class, I love Judkins. He's my RB2. I love Egbuka. He's my wide receiver 2. If we're, in this scenario, I should probably mention, it is listed that Hunter went 4th overall to the Patriots, and he would be sprinkled in on offense, primarily playing defense, which is an important distinction we have to make with all of these mocks. Is what did the person in the mock say about Travis Hunter? Because that factors in. But with these 2 guys, man, they would be very quickly highly valued players at their position. Egbuka is probably immediately a top 15 to 18 dynasty receiver. Like, who would you rather have in this situation? Emeka Egbuka or Rome Odunze?
That's probably right about the line, like wide receiver 15 to 17 in dynasty.
Yeah, like Zay Flowers or Emeka Egbuka in this situation.
Egbuka.
Yeah, T. Higgins or Emeka Egbuka in this situation. It's like pretty much right there. That's where he would be valued. Quinshon Judkins, who would you rather have in this situation? 44th overall draft capital to the Dallas Cowboys, who desperately need an early down running back, who use running backs in the red zone. I've seen comps for this player to Ezekiel Elliott, and it's definitely warranted. Like, Judkins plays just like Zeke does. How high is he valued among running backs? We already talked about Hampton being valued ahead of Bucky Irving. I think you can make the argument Judkins would be 1 spot behind him, still ahead of Bucky Irving.
Yeah, now for me personally, I would have him a little bit lower than that, but I mean, at the end of the day, who knows? Maybe after draft day, I might. You
would cope your way into having him RB7.
Regardless, he'd be at the very minimum like a top 8 or 9 back. But like the more in the offseason I get into it, I'm like, I might just want to support my guy.
Yeah.
For now, he's a Buckeye. Once he's a Cowboy, then we can talk.
It would be a conflicting fandom point for you, for sure.
Same thing happened with Zeke. At first was a Buckeye, then was a Cowboy. So we'll take it. But now I'm on the clock here. And like you said, obviously very close across the board. At the end of the day, though, you get a running back in the 2nd round, landing with Washington Commanders, 2 Jaden Daniels. I'm going to go with Caleb Johnson. I think he'd be a perfect fit for this offense.
I don't disagree with you. I personally wouldn't have gone. I actually would have picked TreVeyon Henderson with that pick.
Well, I have Johnson higher than Henderson.
Yeah, I have Henderson higher than Johnson, and similar exact discussion. Like, this is the reality of the situation.
These are next 3 picks.
How high is Caleb Johnson and TreVeyon Henderson ranked among dynasty running backs? Would you rather have TreVeyon Henderson 33rd overall pick to the Cleveland Browns, or would you rather have Jonathan Taylor? I would rather have TreVeyon Henderson with that kind of draft capital.
We're going to get a whole revamp of this running back dynasty rankings because, like, quite simply, we have 4 of these guys already, and we're probably talking about top 12 dynasty backs the moment that they walk on the field. Probably top 10.
Well, here's a good plug opportunity. Our dynasty trade value chart right now has rookies in it. I have all 5 of these top running backs, the 4 on the board, including Henderson, in my top 14 dynasty running backs without knowing where they're going, what draft capital, what landing spots. And I think you could argue in this mock draft, they all got very, very good landing spots and draft capital because you're like, oh, well, what is Cleveland? Because I'm going to take Henderson right now. What is Cleveland going to do at quarterback? Well, they took Shadur Sanders 2nd overall, and we'll probably get to Sanders here in a second. We're a little bit lower on the prospect, but Henderson, man, 33rd overall draft capital for a guy who's got a quarterback who you and I both would agree isn't the most mobile quarterback in the world. Like, Henderson has the opportunity in this situation. His
catch 100 passes.
He could catch 100 passes in this backfield. His backfield competition is Jerome Ford right now. Nick Chubb is a free agent. TreVeyon Henderson with this kind of draft capital, this is precisely the exact pick or whatever. I think it was 33 or 34 that they spent on Nick Chubb 6 or 7 years ago. And they rode him for 7 or 8 years or 6-7 years. And he was their workhorse. I think Henderson's a 200 carry, 100 target type of running back, maybe even his rookie season, but at the very latest, probably his 2nd season.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And for the record, I should have mentioned his name as well. It would have been 3 in consideration when I made that pick for Caleb Johnson. And Henderson, like you said, great fit. Great draft capital. Not much else to complain there. Getting a back that could potentially be a top 12 back in Dynasty at the 108 in your rookie draft just speak volumes to how stacked this class is. And speaking of just stacked class, we're talking about a 1st round wide receiver that can separate at all 3 levels that ran a 4.29 at the combine. Falling here at the 109 with Matthew Golden to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And stylistically, obviously, we do have some potential concerns about the quarterback position. But in terms of fit, I think if you were to have one established receiver next to Matthew Golden that you would actually prefer from a fit perspective, it would be a guy like George Pickens. It would be a guy that can play, take that physical press, outside coverage, play on the boundary, catch those 50-50 balls. And now you can move Matthew Golden inside out to really affect all three levels of the field. Because like I said, 4.29 speed, the route running ability, he's got it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It would be a great landing spot for Matthew Golden. You don't have to, his biggest weakness, like we said, and my comp for him was a little bit bigger version of Jordan Addison. And Jordan Addison's biggest weakness coming out was that he couldn't really handle physical press man coverage. And Matthew Golden is the exact same situation, only with more juice. Apparently, he's a lot faster than Jordan Addison tested. So, yeah, it would be a great fit for him. You don't have to play the X receiver role because George Pickens is there. Hopefully he's there long term and you guys can work in tandem. We don't know who the quarterback's going to be yet. I'm assuming it would be Justin Fields or Russell Wilson based on what we've heard reports-wise from the Pittsburgh Steelers and what they would need. Maybe they would sign a Sam Darnold if he becomes available. We have no idea. But I like the draft capital. I like the landing spot of Matthew Golden. So I'm on the board here. I think it's probably time to end the slide, most likely for Shadur Sanders. There's one player on the board that I could definitely make the argument I should take over Shadur Sanders here still.
That's what I considered.
So here's why I'm not going to take Luther Burden yet, because Luther Burden in this mock, it says nothing. It says nothing about where his quarterback is coming from, because the Tennessee Titans took Abdul Carter in the first round. No mention of who their quarterback solution would be. And they take Luther Burden in the second round. So that probably means we're looking at, maybe they run it back with Will Levis. Maybe they bring in a competitive Daniel
Rodgers
Jones
and Adams.
Yeah, like Rodgers and Adams potentially. I think that would be mentioned if that were the case, but It's more likely it's a Will Levis in a competition kind of situation. Yeah. If this is how things were to go, which I don't think is necessarily the wrong move for Tennessee, because they don't really have a whole lot of avenues to get a franchise quarterback unless they just want to take Cam Ward. But I'm going to grab Shadur Sanders here. I'm assuming you're going to take probably Luther Burden with the next pick. But Sanders, as I kind of made reference to, yeah, he slides a little bit in this mock. You could make the argument that on a quarterback needy team, you would draft him higher than this. But I'm looking at 3 top 15 dynasty running backs and 3 top 20 to 24 dynasty wide receivers that go ahead of him here, versus where Shadur Sanders will rank for me among quarterbacks, which is in the Michael Penix, Tua Tagovailoa, JJ McCarthy range once he gets drafted, if he does in fact get second overall draft capital of the Browns. Again, great fit for his skill set, gets behind a good offensive line, got a couple of receiving options with Jerry Jeudy, get TreVeyon Henderson out of the backfield to throw the ball to, David Njoku, a great tight end that he can throw the ball to. He's got some work to do, but he's very accurate. He can throw a good deep ball. He sees the field well. And that's kind of been the issue in Cleveland, is that you haven't had a guy who's not going to turn the football over when Jameis Winston and Joe Flacco are out there, but who also sees the field and can throw the football accurately, which has not been the case when Deshaun Watson's been out there. So they would stabilize, hopefully, their quarterback position. I actually love your idea, which is take Hunter, trade up in the first round to go get Shadur Sanders if they want to pair those two guys together. If they do, in fact, like Shadur Sanders, I don't think you'd have to take him at second overall. But then again, if you think he's a franchise quarterback, you probably should just draft him with the highest pick that you have and not risk that another team takes him. But we'll have to wait and see. I don't think Sanders will go this high. I think he's probably a teens to 20s type of quarterback pick, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yep. And then I just run to the podium and I hand in the Luther Burden card. I do think, for me personally, because again, my talent profile on Burden would have him higher than this. But given the fact he fell out of the first in this instance, maybe some teams have some concerns in terms of whether it's, I'm not going to say off the field, but just from a development perspective, Burden's a weird prospect compared to the others, because I do think he's a lot more team dependent. And I don't know how I feel about the Titans fit. He falls out of the first round. He goes to the Tennessee Titans. Like you said, uncertainty at the quarterback position. That would be enough cause for concern to drop him here. But the talent alone makes it so that at this point of the draft, he's a lower risk, super high reward pick at this point.
Yeah, no, he makes a lot of sense here. The schematics of Luther Burden's skill set is the thing I would be worried about in this situation. But I don't think Brian Callahan would not know how to use a guy like this. I think
worked with young Chase, but I know Burden's not young Chase, but
even if you start him off like Tyler Boyd and then develop him over the years and turn him into more of a complete receiver, you could even just start him out. Okay, we're going to use him the way we use Tyler Boyd in Cincinnati to start for the first couple of years of his career. And then maybe he develops into a fully functioned outside wide receiver or whatever. I like the fit. Theoretically, I just, I don't love that they don't have a quarterback. That would be the only real issue here.
And if you wanted to go with Hunter or either of the two tight ends, I think that's reasonable. Obviously, Hunter, the reason why he's fallen here is the report in the mock was full-time cornerback, sprinkle in 20 to 25 plays on offensive wide receiver. 20 to 25 plays, like what's that snap share?
That's,
Of
I
an
mean,
average
we're talking
offense?
route participation wise,
35%?
you're 50 to 60% routes at most, I would say.
35
Like,
snaps?
yeah,
35% snaps?
it's not a great situation. I know Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated said he's got to go to one team meeting. He can't be in the wide receiver meetings and the cornerback meetings at the same time. So he's going to have to play one position more than the other. And it's harder to do that on defense than it is on offense.
Adding to that real quick, I've seen people like take that because basically what happened at Colorado is that's actually what he was doing at Colorado, where he wouldn't really go to wide receiver meetings. He'd just go to cornerback meetings, and they basically ran their offense with a Travis Hunter package was the rumor. What I'm thinking is if he was that fucking good at wide receiver without even going to wide receiver meetings, let him play there.
I know, exactly. There's teams that definitely will prefer him at wide receiver, but I do think the Patriots would be one of those teams that could prefer him at wide receiver because they have a bigger need at that position, but they also might, it's a defensive coach. They might just be like, this guy's got special ball skills. You put him opposite Christian Gonzalez, it's going to be fireworks. I totally get it. I totally get the appeal of it. It's just, man, you have a way bigger need at wide receiver. You might as well let this dude play wide out.
Just I think a few of the most important fundamental traits for a receiver are movement fluidity and ball skills. And those are his best two traits.
The unfortunate thing is those are also very important traits of corner.
Yeah, fair. We're never going to see a bigger question than Travis Hunter.
No, this might be that, like, prior to when Kyler was going to play baseball or football, the last time I remember a prospect being this divided on how he would affect rookie drafts was Kyler Murray in 2019, whether or not he was going to be in the class period because he might have played baseball. So we are only going to go one round, but we can rattle off a couple more picks after this and kind of just go honorable mention style. But the final pick of the first round, I am going to... There's a couple. I'm going to respect the draft capital. I'm going to take my tight end one here. Colston Loveland going to the Indianapolis Colts. He ends up going, 14th overall to the Colts. An offense that I think has fun pieces. Downs, Pittman, Mitchell, Pierce, all those guys can play. But you don't spend the 14th pick in the draft on a guy that you're not going to feature in your offense. It's one of these situations where you go, oh, it's too many mouths to feed kind of wide receiver core. But the cream always rises to the top. To me, if this were to be the case, Michael Pittman's nearing the end of his contract that he's on. Josh Downs is probably the most talented pass catcher on that team right now. And Colston Loveland can really work into this offense. I don't know who's playing quarterback for this team because Anthony Richardson can't hit the broad side of the barn. But I like Colston Loveland to develop into this offense. And again, you could have gone with, maybe take the risk on Hunter now, maybe take Warren instead because he has a little bit more of a clear role for his offense or whatever. But I respect the tape. I watched the Colston Loveland too much.
Yeah, 100%. And it's funny because we talked about this on the wide receiver video because we actually had the Colts in safe of drafting a wide receiver. But this is what I said on it. I said, you can make the case that they're safe of drafting a wide receiver because they have a lot of young investment. But you could also make the case that they need a number one. So if that's the case, that they don't have like any true standout number one wide receiver, if Loveland can be a top end tight end, who's to say he can't be the nucleus of that offense?
Yeah, and when we said they were safe at wide receiver in that video, what we didn't mention once was that they are definitely not safe at tight end. It seems like they were very in on Bowers last year, and it seems like they'd be very in on this duo of tight ends early in their 14th pick.
So like you said, we'll just rapid fire off the next names. I mean, in the next few picks, we would see Tyler Warren go off the board, Travis Hunter going off the board. I think those would be the two next guys.
Yeah, I would personally go with Warren over Hunter, just given that we got 20 to 25 snaps per game report in the mock draft. Again,
overall pick tight end.
We're operating under the assumption that there would be some kind of clarity the way that Jordan Reid gives it to us here. But I think it's entirely possible that we have no clarity whatsoever. Like when it's May 15th right now, and we're about to draft our rookie drafts, and we really have no idea what the team thinks of Travis Hunter in terms of wide receiver or corner. I think that's definitely in play. And if that were the case, I would take Hunter over Loveland and Warren for sure, because then there's the possibility he's going to play a lot more at wide receiver.
Well, yeah, I mean, and of course, if we got the report, hey, he's going to play full-time wide receiver, we're looking no further than 103, possibly even in contention for the 102. Like, I really do feel like that'd be the possibility. I actually have Hunter with a higher grade than McMillan. It would come down for me at that point to landing spots.
I mean, it's higher draft capital on a team that needs a number one in the Patriots. Like, I would.
Yeah, if it was the Patriots specifically, absolutely. I'm just saying in general.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I'm
Well,
just saying in
let's
general.
pretend
Yeah.
they said he's full-time wide receiver because they need a wide receiver more.
Yeah.
It would definitely make some sense there. So yeah, we roll with Warren and then probably Hunter with the next pick. Who
Yep.
would you go in the next direction here? We still got Jackson Dart went 37th overall to the Raiders. We're out of first round players here. Now all the first round players are done. Elijah Arroyo 51st to the Broncos, Trey Harris 53rd to the Buccaneers. Again, that's
There's one
definitely
more clear one for me.
the Chargers get Mason Taylor, Jaden Higgins to the Texans.
It's
I
Jaden
think the one that
Higgins.
you're referring to. And then 59th overall, you got Alec Manor going to the Ravens, which, again, in a real rookie draft, we would have third and fourth and fifth round draft capital, and we'd probably see a lot more running backs filling out this area, just given the talent of this class. We would see, the Cam Scadaboos of the world, the Byshell Tutons of the world, the Dylan Sampsons, the Ollie Gordons, the Devin Neals, whoever else. But we only get a 2-round mock here. Only these 5 running backs went in the first 2 rounds, so we can't really talk about those other players. So you want to go with Jaden Higgins? Is it your pick? Yeah, it is your pick. Do you want to go Jaden Higgins here?
Yeah, so it'd be Jaden Higgins, and again, like, we're not going to spend too much longer on this round because there's only 4 more draftable players based off the Jordan Reid mock. But I mean, he's landing in a situation. We have the Texans very high in terms of the need for wide receiver. Tank Dell, obviously, really much an uncertain, not only for this upcoming season, which not even uncertain this upcoming season. He's not going to play in 2025, but even 2026 on, like, I don't think the outlook is all the greatest. I mean, the injury that he had is very, very serious. He is a smaller overall player. It could take a lot longer to recover. I'm not counting Tank Dell as a significant piece of this receiver core moving forward. And yeah, sure, they could bring back Stephon Diggs, but if they're drafting Jaden Higgins in the second round, I'm almost assuming like they're going with that plan of, we're going to run Nico, we're going to run Jaden on the other side of him.
Yeah, I think that totally makes sense. For what you can do, you can use them interchangeably. Like they're both athletically basically the same player. So that's definitely an interesting thing. I'm going to pull the trigger on the quarterback who goes 37th overall. Like I said, Jackson Dart, he is literally next on my watch list, next on my grading list. I'm very intrigued to see how close is this dude really to Shadur Sanders, because there's a lot of dart smokers. That's what I'm going to call the Jackson Dart hive, a bunch of dart smokers, because everybody who likes Jackson Dart loves Jackson Dart. Like people are in on this dude because of what he can do athletically, what he can do with his arm, what he can do running the football, which of course we care about as fantasy players. And 37th overall draft capital is not nothing, man. Will Levis has gotten some starting time as a early second round pick. Drew Lock had starting time as an early second round pick. Deshaun Kaiser back in 2017 was an early second round pick. He got some starting opportunities. Again, none of these quarterbacks hit, but the opportunity is what you really need there, because Jalen Hurts, for example, got starting opportunity and ended up hitting, even despite being a second round pick. So for me, they bring in Russell Wilson or Justin Fields is what the mock draft says. And then they draft Jackson Dart. In this situation, you got to imagine Dart's going to get on the field at some point during his rookie season. And if he's handing the ball off to Ashton freaking Genty and throwing the ball to Brock Bowers and whoever else, Jacoby Myers, whatever else they have there, they probably need to add receivers, as we talked about. He's got a chance to succeed, man. The Raiders have a decent offensive line. I think Pete Carroll can really stabilize the culture there. This is an interesting landing spot for me.
Yeah, no, 100%. And then the next pick for me personally would be between 2 wide receivers. I do have Manor ranked higher in my rankings, but I do like the landing spot at Tampa Bay a lot better here. So I will go with Trey Harris. In this instance, Jordan Reid describes it as Chris Godwin leaving Tampa Bay. Now, obviously, you're going to go in a tangent in a second.
It's not going to happen, but if it does happen, then in this scenario, we have the knowledge that Chris Godwin left Tampa Bay in this hypothetical fairy tale, by the way, because it would never happen. But in this fairy tale scenario, Chris Godwin is no longer a Buccaneer. Trey Harris can fill that role. Big slot, maybe develop into a bit more of a deep threat later on in his career. It makes sense.
Yeah, like Bucks hit with their pick on Jalen McMillan last year, but Chris Godwin's a pending free agent, and this could start their succession plan for Mike Evans. So it does sound like you guys would move on from Godwin, and then after the year in Jordan Reid's universe, probably move on from Mike Evans, assuming, or not move on from Mike Evans, but like maybe Mike Evans.
Evans himself has said he's probably going to be year to year going forward in his career, and he did sign a 2-year deal with Tampa Bay last year. I think that first decision, do I retire, do I keep playing, will come after this season. He was on one of my favorite Bucks podcasts, and he said, I feel great still. When I'm not feeling great, I'll definitely reevaluate. I think he's probably got 1 more year left in the tank for sure, maybe 2 to 3 if he's really feeling good about it.
Yeah, and as much as I love my boy Elick, it's just not promising when I see the description say Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman form a receiving duo or solid receiving duo, but they should continue to add playmakers. Like, I don't want the wide receiver 3 in a low volume passing offense. That's just not my cup of tea.
Not when both tight ends are also very capable pass catchers as well. Io Manor would actually, like, I've actually been kind of begging the Ravens to draft a receiver like him for a long time. Like, if
Just
you
not
think
him
about,
particularly. I love him.
yeah, I love him too. But like, if you think about back in 2019 when they took Marquise Brown in the first round, or 2018, whatever year that was,
Yeah.
had they taken AJ Brown instead, wouldn't their offense have a guy that they can funnel that short passing game through? Like, they don't. Like, Flowers is obviously that guy for them now. But Io Manor and Flowers, to me, it's like Io Manor is like kind of a better version of what Bateman brings to the table, to be honest. So
Yeah.
it would be interesting. And Bateman's not on a long-term deal, so I think I would take the discount on Io Manor at points in time. But this would be the range where we would start to talk about third and fourth round running backs, probably.
Yeah, no, definitely would be interesting. He'd probably, like in this theoretical scenario, go next. But as we know, without the round 3 information of what's going on, it's kind of hard to mock out the rest. Because, like, realistically, like, sure, for a placeholder perspective, we could put Arroyo, we could put Taylor, we could put those are the last 2 names actually. After
What would you
Io
prefer?
Manor.
Which one would you prefer of the tight ends here? Mason Taylor to the Chargers or Arroyo to the Broncos?
Full disclosure, I haven't watched either of them. I think they're relatively comparable landing spots because on one hand, with Mason Taylor, you're getting Justin Herbert. On the other hand, though, we have heard the Denver Broncos do want a joker on their offense, a guy that can create some yak. Again, I haven't watched these guys, so I can't give you the full insight on their player cards, but I'd probably slightly lean Arroyo, but that's almost a coin flip for me.
Yeah, I haven't watched Arroyo's tape yet or graded him, but I have seen him in spurts because of Cam Ward, obviously. Yeah. So
that's my only substance, but I'm not going to lay claim to it until I actually watch him specifically.
I know it's low-hanging fruit because of the school he went to, but he does kind of remind me a little bit of David Njoku to some degree. So I think if you drop the David Njoku caliber player into the Broncos offense, you'd be talking about a guy who could really command targets right away. So I agree there. And then Mason Taylor is a guy that I really do think is going to go this high, has a chance even potentially to go in like the 30s. Based on what NFL teams really think about it. Maybe, but like, he's a good player. He's crushed the post-draft process. Like, he had a good Senior Bowl, good combine. I mean, or he didn't really do a whole lot at the combine, but his pro day, I'm sure he'll test well too. So there's, again, these tight ends probably wouldn't go this high if we were dealing with all the running backs, because obviously, like, I swear if somebody comments, where the heck is Cam Scadaboo? It's like, he didn't go in this mock draft, so we didn't include him here. But of course, if he was a third round pick, and I'm sure the third and fourth round is going to be loaded with running backs, we would start to factor those guys in. So those are all the players that went in the mock draft. The first round, realistically, the part that actually mattered and the part that we went through in depth there. If you guys enjoyed this video, leave a like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. If you enjoyed Rookie Talk and you want to get more in-depth looks on some of these prospects, we graded like 4 or 5 games of each of these guys in the first round, broke down their tape, wrote them up, player cards, comps, ideal fits, FSC prospect model stuff. All of that is available in our draft guide, which is over on flockfantasy.com. Promo code FSE for 30% off, 7 days for free, and 6 months for free when you sign up annually. And while you're over there, if you guys want to get your team reviewed by us, you want to get a buy, sell, hold report, all that kind of stuff, that is available. Free vouchers for those when you sign up for an annual Mother Flocker tier. And speaking of annual Mother Flockers, if you want to be in our new listener league, annual Mother Flockers will have the highest chance to win a spot in there. We haven't formally decided on what we're going to do. I think I want to, Danny, we could talk about this more off camera, but yeah. I think what I want to do is give an opportunity for people who can get in for free without being a site subscriber. But obviously, site subscribers would then have accelerated odds of getting into the listener league there, maybe 3 entries or whatever versus one.
We'll talk about it.
Something like that. But yeah, if you guys want to join the listener league, it'll probably be free to join, get your hat in the ring potentially into a Dynasty Best Ball League with us. We'll be launching names for that on March 15th, like I said. So definitely check that out. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. But with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.